Intelligence is often misunderstood. Many people believe it is measured by how much you know, how quickly you speak, or how impressive you sound in a room. But real intelligence, the kind that changes the direction of your life, is quieter, deeper, and far more powerful. It shows up in how you control yourself under pressure, how clearly you see situations for what they are, and how wisely you act when no one is watching. This audiobook is not about appearing smart. It is about becoming dangerously intelligent. The kind of intelligence that gives you an edge in thinking, decision-making, and living. Dangerous intelligence is not loud. It does not argue unnecessarily or seek validation. It observes more than it speaks. It thinks before it reacts. It understands people, patterns, and consequences while remaining emotionally steady. This form of intelligence allows you to move through life with clarity instead of confusion, with intention instead of impulse. When you develop it, you stop being easily manipulated by emotions, opinions, and circumstances. You become calm where others panic, focused where others scatter, and decisive where others hesitate. In this audiobook, we will explore intelligence as a discipline rather than a talent. You will learn how to master yourself before trying to master the world. You will learn how to slow down your thinking so you can see more clearly, ask better questions, and make stronger decisions even when information is incomplete. We will break down how to build mental independence, how to understand people without needing their approval, and how to think in long-term consequences instead of short-term comfort. You will also learn how discipline, silence, and emotional control sharpen the mind and protect your judgment. This journey is not about becoming cold or detached from life. It is about becoming grounded. It is about replacing emotional reactions with thoughtful responses, replacing confusion with clarity, and replacing noise with purpose. As you move through this audiobook, you may notice shifts in how you listen, how you speak, and how you decide. You may become more selective with your words, more patient with your actions, and more deliberate with your time. That is not withdrawal, that is growth. Becoming dangerously intelligent comes with responsibility. When you see more clearly, you must act more wisely. When you understand people better, you must choose integrity over manipulation. When you gain mental control, you must use it to build, not to dominate. This audiobook will challenge you to think deeply, question honestly, and refine your mind with discipline and patience. This is not a book to rush through. It is a guide to be absorbed, reflected on, and applied gradually. The goal is not speed, but depth, not perfection, but progress. If you commit to the ideas ahead, you will begin to notice a quiet strength developing within you, a strength rooted in clarity, self-control, and deliberate action. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Master yourself before you try to master anything else. Before you try to change your life, improve your skills, or outthink the world, there is one place you must start, and that place is yourself, not your circumstances, not other people, not your opportunities, you. Because if you cannot control your reactions, your impulses, and your emotions, no amount of knowledge will save you. Intelligence without self-control is unstable. It leaks. It turns against you at the worst possible moment. Most people want to master something external: money, influence, success, respect. But they skip the inner work. They want power without discipline, confidence without control, freedom without responsibility, and that is why they struggle. The truth is simple, even if it's uncomfortable to hear. The first proof of intelligence is self-mastery. If you cannot manage your own behavior, you are not in charge of your life. You are being dragged through it. Think about how often problems are created, not by lack of ability, but by lack of control. A sharp comment said too quickly. A decision made in anger. An impulse followed without thinking. a moment where emotion took the wheel and intelligence was pushed aside. These moments cost people relationships, careers, opportunities, and peace of mind, not because they were incapable, but because they were uncontrolled. Self-control is not suppression. It is not pretending you don't feel anything. It is awareness. It is noticing the emotion rise and choosing not to let it decide for you. It is the ability to pause when everything in you wants to react. That pause, that small space between stimulus and response, is where intelligence lives. And the more you train yourself to create that space, the more powerful you become. When you master yourself, you stop being predictable. Emotional people are easy to manipulate. They can be provoked, rushed, pressured, and steered. A self-controlled person cannot be easily shaken. They do not give others the satisfaction of controlling their mood or decisions. They choose their responses carefully, and because of that, they move through life with quiet authority. This kind of mastery does not come from motivation. It comes from practice, from repeatedly choosing restraint over reaction, from learning to sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, from deciding that your long-term position matters more than short-term relief. Every time you hold your tongue when you want to explode, every time you delay gratification, every time you act deliberately instead of impulsively, you are sharpening your intelligence. Understand this clearly. The world will always try to pull reactions out of you. People will test you. Situations will pressure you. Circumstances will tempt you to abandon discipline. That is not a sign that something is wrong. That is the training ground. Self-mastery is built in those moments, not in comfort, but in tension. As you develop this control, something changes. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your decisions become stronger. You stop wasting energy on regret and damage control. You begin to trust yourself because you know you won't sabotage your future for a temporary emotion. That trust is powerful. It becomes the foundation for confidence, consistency, and leadership in your own life. Do not rush this step. Do not underestimate it. Every form of mastery you want later, mental, financial, social, strategic, depends on this one. If you can't master yourself, everything else will remain fragile. But if you can, you will have built something most people never do, a stable, disciplined, intelligent core that nothing easily shakes. Master yourself first. Everything else becomes possible after that. Chapter 2. Learn to think, not just consume information. We live in an age where information is everywhere. Answers are instant. Opinions are endless. Knowledge is cheap and available at the touch of a screen. And yet, clear thinking is rare. That should tell you something important. Knowing more does not automatically make you intelligent. In fact, for many people, constant consumption has weakened their ability to think at all. Most people confuse information with understanding. They read, watch, scroll, and listen, but they don't stop to process. They collect facts like decorations, not tools. Their minds become storage rooms, not workshops. Intelligence, however, is not about how much you take in. It is about what you do with what you take in. It is about connecting ideas, questioning assumptions, and forming your own conclusions. When you only consume, your mind stays passive. Someone else decides what matters, what is true, and what deserves your attention. You become dependent on external input to tell you how to think and what to believe. That dependency is subtle, but it is dangerous. A mind that does not practice thinking becomes easily influenced, easily confused, and easily overwhelmed. Learning to think means slowing down the intake and increasing the processing. It means asking simple but powerful questions. Why does this matter? What is being assumed here? What is missing from this picture? How does this connect to what I already know? These questions turn information into insight. Without them, information remains noise. Dangerously intelligent people do not rush to agree or disagree. They pause. They examine. They resist the urge to form quick opinions just to feel certain. They understand that clarity takes effort, and that shallow certainty is often worse than honest uncertainty. Instead of reacting to every new idea, they test it. They turn it over in their mind. They see how it fits with reality, not just how it sounds. Another trap of constant consumption is mental clutter. When you fill your mind with too much input, you lose focus. Your thoughts become fragmented. You jump from idea to idea without depth. Thinking requires space, silence, time. If your mind is always busy absorbing something new, it never gets the chance to organize what it already has. That is why some of the clearest thinkers are also the most selective consumers. This does not mean you should stop learning. It means you should learn with intention. Read less, but think more. Listen carefully but reflect deeply. After encountering a new idea, sit with it. Try to explain it in your own words. Consider where it applies and where it doesn't. Ask yourself how it could be wrong. This kind of engagement strengthens your mind, the way resistance strengthens muscle. True thinking is uncomfortable at times. It forces you to admit what you don't know. It challenges beliefs you may have held for years. It requires patience in a world that rewards speed. But discomfort is often a sign that real growth is happening. When your mind stretches beyond familiar patterns, it becomes sharper, more flexible, more resilient. You will notice a shift when you begin to think instead of just consume. Conversations feel different. You listen more carefully. You speak with more precision. You become less impressed by loud opinions and more interested in well-reasoned ones. You stop repeating what everyone else is saying and start expressing what you actually understand. Remember, this information is everywhere, but wisdom is built. It is built through attention, reflection, and disciplined thought. Anyone can collect facts. Few people can make sense of them. That difference is where intelligence shows itself. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, you must protect your ability to think. Guard it from overload. Train it with questions, strengthen it with reflection. Because in a world full of noise, the person who can think clearly does not just survive, they lead. Chapter 3. Slow down your thinking to see more. Clearly, speed is often mistaken for intelligence. Quick answers, fast decisions, instant reactions, they look impressive on the surface. But most mistakes in life are not made because people think too slowly. They are made because people think too fast. They rush to conclusions, act on emotion, and confuse urgency with importance. Real intelligence knows when to slow down. When you think quickly, you see only what is obvious. You notice the loudest signal, the strongest emotion, the most immediate threat or reward. But life is rarely that simple. Beneath the surface are patterns, motives, consequences, and long-term effects that only reveal themselves when you pause. Slowing down your thinking is not about hesitation. It is about depth. Consider how many problems could have been avoided with a moment of patience. A conversation that turned into conflict. A decision that felt right in the moment but wrong later. An opportunity taken too quickly without understanding the cost. These outcomes are not signs of low intelligence. They are signs of untrained thinking. The mind reacted before it understood. Dangerously intelligent people build a habit of pause. They create space between what happens and what they do next. That space may be only a few seconds, but it changes everything. In that pause, emotion settles, perspective widens, alternatives appear. What felt urgent loses some of its power, and what truly matters becomes clearer. Slowing down your thinking also protects you from manipulation. Fast thinkers are easy to pressure. They can be rushed into decisions, pushed by fear, or tempted by urgency. When you slow down, you remove that leverage. You stop being controlled by timelines that are not yours. You begin to decide on your terms, not someone else's. This does not mean you avoid action. It means you choose it deliberately. You gather enough understanding before moving. You ask yourself simple questions. What am I missing? What happens if I wait? What is the long-term effect of this choice? These questions do not slow you down in life. They save you from unnecessary damage. Clarity requires calm. When your mind is racing, it cannot see accurately. Stress narrows perception. Anxiety distorts judgment. Slowing down allows your nervous system to settle, and when it does, your thinking improves automatically. You hear more. You notice details. You sense when something is off, even if you can't immediately explain why. There is also confidence in slow thinking. When you are not rushing, you stop competing for attention. You do not feel the need to respond immediately to prove your worth. You become comfortable with silence. That comfort sends a signal to yourself and to others that you are grounded. You are not being dragged by the moment. Practicing slower thinking starts with small choices. Pause before responding in conversation. Delay decisions that carry long-term consequences. Give yourself time to reflect instead of reacting. Over time, this becomes natural. Your default state shifts from urgency to awareness. As you develop this habit, you will notice something important. Your accuracy improves. You make fewer mistakes. You choose better paths. You stop apologizing for avoidable errors. Life begins to feel less chaotic, not because it has changed, but because you are no longer rushing through it blindly. In a world that rewards speed, slowing down is a quiet advantage. It allows you to see what others miss and avoid traps others fall into. It turns thinking into a tool instead of a reflex. And when you can think clearly under pressure, you gain something rare: control. Slow down your thinking. Clarity is waiting there. Chapter 4. Build mental independence. One of the most important steps toward real intelligence is learning how to think without permission. Most people don't realize how much of their thinking is borrowed. Their opinions are shaped by trends, social circles, headlines, and the loudest voices around them. They believe they are choosing, but often they are simply absorbing. Mental independence begins when you notice this and decide to stop. The world rewards conformity. Agreeing is easier than questioning. Following is safer than standing alone. From a young age, people are trained to look outward for validation before looking inward for truth. Over time, this creates a habit of dependency. Instead of asking, "What do I think?" people ask, "What am I supposed to think?" That habit weakens judgment and erodes confidence. Dangerously intelligent people do the opposite. They are willing to be temporarily uncomfortable in order to be permanently free. They do not reject popular ideas just to be different, but they also do not accept them without examination. They test beliefs against reality, logic, and experience. If something holds up, they keep it. If it doesn't, they let it go. Regardless of how popular it is. Building mental independence requires courage. The moment you stop agreeing automatically, you risk misunderstanding. You risk being labeled difficult, quiet, or even wrong. But independence has always carried a cost. The question is whether you are willing to pay the price of thinking for yourself, or whether you prefer the comfort of blending in. A key part of independent thinking is learning to sit with uncertainty. When you are not relying on group opinions, there will be moments when you don't immediately know what to believe. Many people rush to adopt opinions simply to escape that discomfort. Intelligent thinkers allow the discomfort. They wait, they gather information. They think, they understand that uncertainty is not weakness. It is a stage of clarity forming. Another trap to avoid is emotional attachment to beliefs. When your identity is tied to what you believe, you stop thinking and start defending. Mental independence means being willing to change your mind when evidence changes. That flexibility is not inconsistency, it is intelligence in motion. A rigid mind may feel strong, but it breaks easily. A flexible mind adapts and grows. You also build independence by controlling what you allow into your mind. Constant exposure to noise, outrage, and unfiltered opinions makes it difficult to think clearly. Independent thinkers are selective. They choose their inputs carefully. They value depth over volume. They understand that attention is limited, and that protecting it is a form of discipline. As your independence grows, so does your confidence. You stop needing constant agreement to feel secure. You listen without immediately reacting. You can hold your position calmly, without needing to convince everyone else. This quiet confidence is powerful. It signals that you are grounded in your thinking, not swayed by every shift in the room. Mental independence does not isolate you, it strengthens your relationships. When you are not seeking approval, your interactions become more honest. You respect others' views without being controlled by them. You can learn from disagreement instead of fearing it. Conversations become exchanges, not competitions. Building mental independence is a process. It happens through daily choices, questioning instead of repeating, thinking instead of reacting, pausing instead of rushing to agree. Over time, these choices compound. You develop a private, reliable inner compass. You know where you stand, even when others are unsure. In a world full of borrowed opinions, an independent mind stands out. Not because it is loud, but because it is steady, and that steadiness becomes a source of strength you can rely on for the rest of your life. Chapter 5. Ask better questions before you look for better answers. Most people spend their lives chasing answers. They want quick solutions, clear instructions, and certainty as fast as possible. When something goes wrong, the first instinct is to ask, "What should I do?" But dangerously intelligent people start somewhere else. They understand that the quality of an answer can never exceed the quality of the question that produced it. A weak question leads to a weak outcome. If you ask shallow questions, you get shallow results. If you ask rushed questions, you get rushed decisions. Many problems persist, not because answers are unavailable, but because the questions being asked are wrong. The mind moves in the direction of its questions. Change the question, and you change the direction of your thinking. Better questions slow you down in the right way. They interrupt emotional reactions and force clarity. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" an intelligent mind asks, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of asking, "How do I get out of this discomfort?" it asks, "What is this discomfort pointing to?" These shifts may seem small, but they change everything. Dangerously intelligent people use questions to explore, not to escape. They do not ask questions to avoid responsibility or to justify inaction. They ask to understand structure, cause, and consequence. They are curious about how things actually work, not just how they feel in the moment. Curiosity, when disciplined, becomes a powerful thinking tool. One of the most useful habits you can develop is learning to question your own assumptions. Assumptions are invisible beliefs that guide your behavior without your awareness. When something frustrates you, ask yourself, "What am I assuming here?" You may discover that your expectations were unrealistic, outdated, or never examined in the first place. Questioning assumptions often dissolves problems before you try to solve them. Good questions also protect you from being misled. In a world full of confident voices, the ability to ask calm, precise questions keeps you grounded. Instead of accepting statements at face value, You ask, compared to what? Based on what evidence? Under what conditions does this work? These questions do not make you cynical, they make you clear. Asking better questions also improves your relationships. When you stop assuming motives and start asking for understanding, conflict softens. When you seek clarity instead of victory, conversations deepen. People feel heard, and you gain information that reaction would have blocked. Intelligence listens as much as it analyzes. It is important to note that better questions do not always bring immediate comfort. Sometimes they reveal uncomfortable truths. Sometimes they expose areas where you need to grow, change, or take responsibility. But avoiding those questions does not protect you, it delays progress. Intelligent people are willing to face uncomfortable answers because they value long-term clarity over short-term relief. You can practice this daily. When faced with a decision, ask what matters most here. When feeling stuck, ask what am I avoiding? When something feels urgent, ask will this still matter in a year? Over time, these questions reshape how you think automatically. They become part of your internal dialogue. Remember, answers close thinking. Questions open it. When you rush to answers, you stop exploring too soon. When you learn to live with better questions, you give your mind room to work properly. That room is where insight forms. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, do not obsess over having the right answers. Obsess over asking the right questions, because the right question, asked honestly and patiently, has a way of leading you exactly where you need to go. Chapter 6. Control your emotions before they control your decisions. Emotions are powerful. They shape perception, influence judgment, and drive behavior. Yet most people treat them as unquestionable authorities. If they feel angry, they act angry. If they feel afraid, they retreat. If they feel excited, they rush forward. This automatic obedience is not strength. It is a loss of control. Dangerous intelligence begins when emotions are understood, not obeyed. Controlling your emotions does not mean eliminating them. It means changing your relationship with them. Emotions are signals, not commands. They provide information about what is happening inside you, but they are not designed to make decisions for you. When emotions take the lead, logic is silenced, and when logic is silenced, mistakes follow. Think back to moments when emotion overpowered reason, a decision made in anger that created regret, a fearful hesitation that caused a missed opportunity, an emotional reaction that damaged trust. In those moments, intelligence was present, but it was not in control. The emotion spoke louder, and the decision paid the price. Dangerously intelligent people create separation. They feel emotions fully, but they do not act immediately on them. They observe their internal state the way a scientist observes data. I am feeling anger. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling excitement. That simple act of naming creates distance, and in that distance choice returns. This ability is especially important under pressure. Stress amplifies emotion and narrows thinking. When emotions surge, the mind becomes focused on immediate relief rather than long-term benefit. Slowing down, breathing and giving yourself time to settle is not weakness. It is strategy. It allows the emotional wave to pass before it decides your future. Another critical skill is recognizing emotional patterns. Many reactions are not about the present moment at all. They are echoes of past experiences, insecurities, or unmet expectations. When you react automatically, you are often responding to history, not reality. Intelligence asks, is this about now, or is this about something old? That question alone can prevent unnecessary damage. Emotional control also changes how others experience you. People quickly learn whether you are reactive or composed. A reactive person is easy to provoke, manipulate, or destabilize. A composed person sets the emotional tone of the room. Calm becomes their signature, and calm, over time, becomes authority. This does not mean you suppress expression or become emotionally distant. It means you express emotions intentionally. You choose when to speak, when to wait, and when to let things pass. You stop giving people instant access to your emotional state. That choice protects your energy and your clarity. Practicing emotional control starts in small moments. Pause before responding to criticism. Delay important decisions when emotions are high. Notice physical signals, tightness, heat, restlessness, that indicate emotional activation. These are early warnings, not emergencies. Responding to them with awareness instead of action is how control is built. Over time, something shifts. Emotions still arise, but they no longer hijack your thinking. You become less reactive, more deliberate. You stop being surprised by your own behavior. That consistency builds self-trust, and self-trust is one of the strongest foundations of confidence. Remember this: every major regret is tied to a moment when emotion overruled judgment. Every major breakthrough is tied to a moment when someone stayed composed under pressure. Control your emotions, and you reclaim your ability to choose wisely. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, this skill is non-negotiable. Master your emotions, and your decisions will finally reflect your true capacity. Chapter 7. Understand people without needing their approval. One of the most subtle traps in life is the need to be liked. It hides behind politeness, cooperation, and even kindness. But when approval becomes a requirement, clarity disappears. Your words soften when they should be firm. Your decisions bend when they should stand. And slowly, without noticing, your thinking becomes compromised. Dangerous intelligence begins when you can understand people deeply without depending on their acceptance. Most people are not aware of how much approval influences their behavior. They say yes when they mean no. They stay silent when they should speak. They agree publicly and resent privately. This is not because they lack intelligence, but because they fear rejection. That fear distorts judgment. When the need for approval enters the room, honesty often leaves. Understanding people requires observation, not emotional dependence. When you are desperate to be liked, you stop seeing clearly. You interpret words instead of actions. You overlook patterns because acknowledging them might create discomfort. But when you release the need for approval, your perception sharpens. You begin to notice tone, timing, consistency, and motive. You see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. Dangerously intelligent people listen carefully, but they do not chase validation. They pay attention to behavior over promises. They notice how people act under pressure, not how they speak when things are easy. This kind of understanding is only possible when you are emotionally independent. Approval seeking creates blind spots. Independence removes them. Letting go of approval does not mean becoming cold or disrespectful. It means choosing truth over comfort. You can still be kind, fair, and respectful without surrendering your judgment. In fact, real respect often increases when people sense that you are not trying to please them. Calm independence creates a quiet strength that others recognize, even if they don't fully understand it. When you no longer need approval, conversations change. You listen more patiently because you are not waiting for your turn to impress. You speak more clearly because you are not filtering every thought through the fear of rejection. You can disagree without hostility and accept disagreement without defensiveness. This emotional stability makes communication more honest and effective. There is also freedom in this shift. You stop carrying the weight of other people's opinions. Praise no longer inflates you, and criticism no longer crushes you. Feedback becomes information, not identity. This balance allows you to adjust when needed without losing your center. Understanding people without needing approval also protects you from manipulation. Many forms of control rely on emotional hooks, guilt, flattery, fear of disapproval. When those hooks no longer work on you, influence loses its power. You can evaluate requests, offers, and demands based on logic and alignment, not emotional pressure. This skill develops gradually. Start by noticing when you change your behavior to gain approval. Notice when you withhold truth to avoid discomfort. These moments are not failures, they are signals. Each time you choose clarity over approval, you strengthen your independence. Over time, something unexpected happens. People who value honesty begin to respect you more. Those who relied on your compliance may resist at first, but that resistance is often a sign that your growth is real. Not everyone will be comfortable with your independence, and that is okay. You are not here to be universally approved. You are here to live intelligently. Understanding people deeply while remaining emotionally free is a rare skill. It allows you to connect without losing yourself, to lead without dominating, and to move through relationships with clarity instead of confusion. When you release the need for approval, you gain something far more valuable: control over your own thinking. That control is what allows intelligence to operate at its highest level. Chapter 8. Say less, observe more. In a world that rewards constant expression, silence is often misunderstood. Speaking quickly, sharing opinions freely, and reacting instantly are seen as signs of confidence and intelligence. But the opposite is often true. The people who speak the most usually know the least about what is actually happening. Dangerous intelligence understands the value of restraint. It knows that observation comes before expression. When you speak less, you notice more. You hear not only what is said, but how it is said. You notice pauses, tone shifts, and contradictions. You observe patterns instead of isolated moments. Most people talk to release tension or prove presence. Intelligent people listen to gather information. That difference alone creates an advantage. Silence creates space. And in that space, people reveal themselves. They fill the quiet with explanations, justifications, and unfiltered thoughts. When you rush to speak, you interrupt this process. You trade insight for noise. But when you stay quiet, you allow reality to show itself without interference. This does not mean withholding speech out of fear. Strategic silence is intentional, not timid. It is a choice to prioritize understanding over expression. It is knowing that not every thought needs to be shared, and not every moment requires a response. The ability to remain composed without speaking is a sign of inner control. Many conflicts escalate because of unnecessary words. A comment made too quickly, a defense offered too soon, an explanation given to someone who was not interested in understanding. When you speak less, you reduce friction. You avoid revealing more than necessary. You protect your position. Dangerously intelligent people understand that words have weight. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back. Silence, on the other hand, keeps options open. It allows you to adjust, to choose your timing, and to speak with precision when it truly matters. Speaking less does not make you invisible. It makes you deliberate. Observation also sharpens judgment. When you are not busy talking, your mind stays engaged with what is unfolding. You begin to see dynamics, power shifts, and unspoken rules. You notice who leads, who follows, who reacts emotionally, and who stays composed. This awareness informs better decisions later. Another benefit of speaking less is emotional regulation. Talking often amplifies emotion. Silence allows it to settle. When you resist the urge to react verbally, you give yourself time to regain clarity. Many intelligent responses are born in silence, not in immediate reaction. As you practice this, you may notice discomfort. Silence can feel awkward at first, especially in social situations. But that discomfort is temporary. Over time, silence becomes natural. You grow comfortable with not filling every gap, and that comfort signals confidence. People sense when someone is not desperate to be heard. This does not mean you never speak. It means you choose when to speak. When you do, your words carry more impact, because they are rare, measured, and grounded. People listen differently when they know you don't speak casually. Practicing this skill is simple, but not easy. Pause before responding. Let others finish fully. Allow silence to exist without rushing to end it. Ask yourself whether what you are about to say adds value or simply adds noise. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. In a noisy world, clarity belongs to those who can observe quietly. Saying less and observing more is not withdrawal, it is preparation. It allows you to move with insight instead of impulse. Silence sharpens intelligence. Use it well. Chapter 9. Think in long-term consequences. Most people live inside the moment. They make decisions based on how something feels right now, how convenient it is today, or how quickly it solves an immediate problem. The future is treated like a distant idea instead of a living reality. Dangerous intelligence operates differently. It thinks ahead, it sees beyond the present moment, and asks, what does this lead to? Short-term thinking is seductive. It promises relief, comfort, and certainty. But it often hides long-term costs. A decision that feels easy today can become a burden tomorrow. A shortcut that saves time now may steal opportunity later. Intelligent people learn to resist the pull of the immediate and train their minds to follow the chain of consequences forward. Thinking long-term does not mean predicting everything perfectly. It means respecting cause and effect. Every choice sets something in motion. Words create relationships. Habits shape character. Small decisions repeated over time build outcomes that feel inevitable later. When you understand this, you stop treating decisions casually. Many regrets come from ignoring this principle. People say, I didn't think it would matter, or I didn't see that coming. Often the signs were there, but they were ignored in favor of convenience or emotion. Long-term thinkers pause and ask, if I keep doing this, where does it lead? That single question filters out many bad choices. Dangerously intelligent people also understand compounding. The future is not built by one dramatic decision, but by consistent behavior. Discipline compounds, learning compounds, poor habits compound too. When you think long-term, you become more patient with progress and less tolerant of self-sabotage. This mindset changes how you handle discomfort. Short-term thinkers avoid pain at all costs. Long-term thinkers understand that some discomfort is an investment. They are willing to endure temporary difficulty for lasting stability. They delay gratification not because they are deprived, but because they are strategic. Long-term thinking also brings emotional stability. When you are focused only on now, every setback feels overwhelming. But when you view life as a longer arc, you gain perspective. A bad day becomes a data point, not a disaster. A mistake becomes a lesson, not a verdict. This perspective protects your confidence and keeps you moving forward. Another benefit is clarity in relationships. When you think long-term, you pay attention to patterns, not promises. You notice consistency, not charm. You choose trust based on behavior over time, not emotional moments. This saves you from repeated disappointment and poor alliances. Practicing long-term thinking starts with slowing down decisions that matter. Ask yourself how this choice affects your future self. Ask what habits you are reinforcing. Ask whether this action aligns with the direction you want your life to move in. These questions anchor you beyond the moment. Over time, this way of thinking becomes natural. You stop being surprised by outcomes because you've already considered them. You feel less reactive and more prepared. Life becomes less chaotic, not because it is easier, but because you are thinking ahead. In a world driven by urgency and instant reward, long-term thinking is a quiet form of power. It allows you to build instead of chase, to position instead of react, and to move with intention instead of impulse. Think beyond today. Your future is already listening to the choices you make now. Chapter 10. Identify and eliminate your mental weaknesses. Everyone has mental weaknesses. The difference is that most people deny them, hide from them, or blame others for them. Dangerous intelligence takes a different approach. It faces weakness directly, without excuses and without drama, because what you refuse to confront will quietly control you. Mental weaknesses are not always obvious. They often disguise themselves as habits, preferences, or personality traits. Procrastination is called waiting for the right time. Overreacting is called being passionate. Avoidance is called protecting peace. These labels make weakness feel acceptable, but they don't make it harmless. Intelligence begins with calling things by their real name. The hardest part of self-honesty is separating ego from observation. Ego wants to protect your self-image. It explains away mistakes and defends patterns that feel familiar. Observation, on the other hand, simply notices. It asks, what do I consistently struggle with? Where do I lose control? What situations bring out my worst thinking? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are powerful. Dangerously intelligent people track their behavior, not obsessively, but honestly. They notice patterns over time. They pay attention to repeated outcomes. If a situation keeps producing the same negative result, they assume the issue is internal, not external. This shift alone puts them ahead of most people. Identifying weaknesses is not about self-criticism. It is about self-responsibility. Beating yourself up wastes energy. Understanding yourself creates leverage. When you know your weak points, you can design around them. You can create systems that protect you when your discipline is low and your emotions are high. For example, if you know you tend to make poor decisions when tired, you stop deciding important things late at night. If you know you avoid difficult conversations, you schedule them intentionally instead of waiting for the perfect moment. If you know you get distracted easily, you reduce exposure to distractions instead of relying on willpower. This is intelligence in action. Another common mental weakness is overconfidence. Thinking you are immune to mistakes is itself a mistake. Intelligent people remain cautious about their own judgment. They seek feedback, they review decisions, they ask themselves what they might be missing. This humility is not insecurity, it is precision. Eliminating weaknesses does not mean becoming flawless. It means reducing the damage they cause. You may never completely remove certain tendencies, but you can limit their influence. Awareness turns blind spots into manageable factors. Once a weakness is visible, it loses much of its power. This process also builds trust with yourself. When you consistently address your weaknesses, instead of ignoring them, you become reliable. You stop surprising yourself with behavior you regret. That reliability strengthens confidence, not the fragile kind based on ego, but the solid kind based on consistency. It's important to understand that growth is not about adding more skills, it's about removing friction. Many people try to improve by piling on techniques and strategies, but progress often comes faster when you eliminate what holds you back. Weakness removal clears the path for strength to express itself. Make self-review a regular practice, not emotional, not judgmental, just factual. What worked, what didn't, what pattern showed up again. Over time, this habit sharpens your self-awareness and strengthens your judgment. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, you must be willing to see yourself clearly, not as you wish to be, and not as you fear to be, but as you are. That clarity is not comfortable, but it is liberating. Identify your mental weaknesses. Eliminate their influence, and watch how much lighter, sharper, and more controlled your life becomes. Chapter 11. Learn to decide without perfect information. One of the greatest sources of stagnation in life is the need for certainty. Many people delay decisions because they want more data, more clarity, more reassurance. They tell themselves they are being careful, but often they are being afraid. Dangerous intelligence understands a hard truth. Perfect information almost never arrives, and waiting for it can quietly cost you years. Life does not reward those who wait until everything is clear. It rewards those who can think clearly within uncertainty. Most important decisions, career moves, relationships, commitments, opportunities, are made with incomplete information. If you demand certainty before acting, you give control of your life to hesitation. This does not mean acting recklessly. There is a difference between thoughtful risk and blind impulse. Intelligent decision-making is about weighing what you know, acknowledging what you don't, and moving forward anyway. It is the ability to say, this is not guaranteed, but it is aligned, and taking responsibility for the outcome. Fear often disguises itself as logic. The mind creates endless what-ifs to avoid commitment. What if it fails? What if something better appears? What if I'm wrong? These questions feel rational, but when they prevent all action, they become a trap. Dangerously intelligent people recognize when analysis has turned into avoidance. Confidence is built through decisions, not before them. Many people believe they must feel confident to act. In reality, confidence comes after action. Each decision you make strengthens your judgment, regardless of the outcome. Even mistakes teach you something valuable. Indecision teaches nothing. Learning to decide without perfect information also sharpens intuition. Intuition is not magic. It is pattern recognition built through experience. The more decisions you make, the more data your mind accumulates. Over time, you sense when something is right or wrong before you can fully explain it. But this only develops through action, not observation. Another key skill is setting decision thresholds. Not every choice deserves the same level of analysis. Small decisions should be made quickly. Larger ones deserve more thought, but not endless delay. Intelligent people know when enough information is enough. They recognize diminishing returns and move forward. Accepting responsibility is essential. When you decide with incomplete information, you must own the outcome. Blaming circumstances or people weakens your intelligence. Responsibility strengthens it. You learn faster, adjust better, and recover quicker when things don't go as planned. This mindset also reduces anxiety. Ironically, indecision creates more stress than most decisions. When you are stuck between options, your mind stays in tension. Choosing a path, even an imperfect one, restores movement. Movement creates clarity. Dangerously intelligent people also review their decisions. They do not obsess, but they reflect. What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently next time? This reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without it, decisions repeat the same mistakes. Practice making decisions. Start small, choose deliberately, and commit. Notice how often the fear of being wrong was worse than the result itself. Over time, your tolerance for uncertainty increases, and your judgment becomes stronger. Remember, life is not waiting for you to be certain. It is moving forward whether you decide or not. Choosing to decide is choosing to participate. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, stop waiting for perfect clarity. Learn to move with partial information, steady thinking, and full responsibility. That is how progress is made. Chapter 12. Build systems that think for you. One of the biggest misconceptions about intelligence is that it operates best through constant effort. People believe that smart lives are built by willpower, motivation, and endless decision-making. In reality, the most intelligent people reduce the number of decisions they have to make. They don't rely on motivation, they rely on systems. A system is a structure that guides behavior automatically. It removes friction from good choices and adds friction to bad ones. When you build systems, you stop asking yourself what to do in the moment. The decision has already been made. This frees your mind for deeper thinking instead of constant self-negotiation. Willpower is unreliable. It fluctuates with mood, energy, and stress. On your best days, it feels strong. On your worst days, it disappears. Systems, on the other hand, don't care how you feel. They operate consistently. That consistency is what makes them powerful. Dangerously intelligent people design their lives to protect their thinking. They create routines that reduce mental clutter. They organize their environment so focus becomes the default. They automate habits that support long-term goals. This is not rigidity, it is strategy. Think about how much energy is wasted deciding the same things over and over. What to work on first, when to rest, how to respond to familiar situations. Each decision drains mental resources. Systems remove that drain. They turn recurring decisions into automatic actions. Building systems starts with identifying where your judgment fails under pressure. Do you lose focus when overwhelmed? Do you make poor choices when tired? Do you procrastinate when tasks feel unclear? These are not character flaws, they are design flaws. Fix the system, and the behavior improves naturally. For example, instead of relying on discipline to focus, create a system that limits distractions. Instead of trusting motivation to exercise, schedule it as a non-negotiable appointment. Instead of hoping you'll remember important priorities, write them down and review them daily. These small structures protect intelligence when emotions and energy fluctuate. Systems also prevent decision fatigue. When your mind is not overloaded with trivial choices, it performs better on important ones. This is why clear thinkers often live simply. They minimize unnecessary complexity so their attention can be directed where it matters most. Another advantage of systems is resilience. When life becomes stressful, habits are often the first things to break. Systems hold even under pressure. They give you something to return to when focus is lost. This stability keeps you grounded during chaos. Designing effective systems requires honesty. You must accept how you actually behave, not how you wish you behaved. Intelligent systems work with human nature, not against it. They assume moments of weakness and plan for them. That is not pessimism, it is realism. Over time, systems compound. Small daily structures create massive long-term outcomes. When good behavior becomes automatic, progress feels effortless. This is not because the work disappeared, but because resistance did. Building systems that think for you does not make you less intelligent, it makes you more strategic. It allows your intelligence to be used where it has the most impact, learning, creating, deciding, and adapting. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, stop relying on motivation. Build systems that support clarity, discipline, and consistency. When your systems are strong, your thinking stays sharp, even on your worst days. Chapter 13. Use discipline to sharpen your mind. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many people see it as restriction, pressure, or punishment. They associate it with forcing themselves to do things they don't want to do. But in reality, discipline is not about force, it is about freedom. Dangerous intelligence understands that discipline is what clears the mind, strengthens focus, and creates mental sharpness. A distracted mind is a weak mind. When your attention is scattered, your thinking becomes shallow. You jump between tasks, thoughts, and impulses without depth or direction. Discipline creates boundaries. It tells your mind where to focus and where not to wander. Within those boundaries, clarity grows. Think of discipline as mental alignment. It brings your actions into agreement with your intentions. Without it, even the smartest ideas remain unused. Intelligence without discipline stays theoretical. Discipline turns thinking into action, and action into results. Dangerously intelligent people use discipline to protect their energy. They understand that mental fatigue dulls judgment, so they structure their days to reduce unnecessary decisions, distractions, and emotional noise. They do not leave their attention exposed to constant interruption. They guard it carefully, because attention is the fuel of thought. Discipline also strengthens patience. When you train yourself to follow routines, complete tasks, and delay gratification, your mind becomes calmer. You stop craving constant stimulation. You become comfortable with focus. That comfort allows deeper thinking to emerge. Many breakthroughs come not from inspiration, but from sustained attention. This kind of discipline is not rigid. It is intentional. It is choosing consistency over chaos. It is doing small, important things, even when they don't feel exciting. Over time, these small acts build mental endurance. Your ability to concentrate improves. Your resistance to distraction increases. Your thinking becomes steadier under pressure. Another benefit of discipline is emotional regulation. When your life lacks structure, emotions easily take over. Fatigue leads to irritability. Stress leads to impulsive decisions. Discipline stabilizes your internal state. Regular sleep, movement, reflection, and focused work create emotional balance. That balance supports clear thinking. Discipline also builds trust with yourself. Each time you follow through on a commitment, even a small one, you reinforce self-respect. You begin to rely on your own word. This reliability removes internal conflict. When your mind is not fighting your behavior, thinking becomes smoother and more confident. Many people wait to feel motivated before acting. Intelligent people act first and let motivation follow. Discipline creates momentum. Momentum creates motivation. This order matters. Waiting for motivation keeps you stuck. Discipline moves you forward. You don't need extreme discipline to sharpen your mind. You need consistent discipline. Simple routines, practiced daily, are enough. Set times for focused thinking. Limit distractions intentionally. Commit to finishing what you start. These practices train your mind to stay engaged instead of drifting. Over time, discipline changes how you experience effort. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once required willpower becomes automatic. This is when discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. You become someone who follows through, who stays focused, who thinks clearly. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, stop seeing discipline as a burden. See it as a sharpening tool. It removes mental rust. It strengthens focus. It protects clarity. Discipline does not limit intelligence. It reveals it. Chapter 14. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't want to understand. One of the most exhausting habits you can develop is over-explaining yourself. You clarify, justify, defend, and repeat, hoping that if you find the right words, understanding will finally appear. But dangerous intelligence recognizes a hard truth. Not everyone is confused. Some people simply do not want to understand, and no amount of explanation will change that. Many misunderstandings are not intellectual problems, they are emotional or motivational ones. When someone is committed to their perspective, threatened by your growth, or invested in misunderstanding you, clarity becomes irrelevant. Explaining yourself in those moments does not create understanding, it drains your energy and weakens your position. Intelligent people learn to recognize the difference between genuine curiosity and resistance. Genuine curiosity asks questions, listens and reflects. Resistance interrupts, dismisses, and argues in circles. When you mistake resistance for curiosity, you keep talking long after silence would have served you better. The urge to explain often comes from the need to be validated. You want to be seen as reasonable, fair, or good. But when you need approval, you hand control to the listener. You begin shaping your words around their reactions. Your thinking bends, your confidence shrinks. Dangerous intelligence does not depend on being understood to remain steady. This does not mean becoming indifferent or arrogant. It means choosing discernment. You explain when explanation has value. You stop when it doesn't. You learn that clarity is not something you force. It is something others must be willing to receive. Over-explaining also weakens your communication. The more you justify, the less confident you sound. Short, clear statements carry more authority than long defenses. When you trust your judgment, your words become simpler. When you doubt it, they multiply. There is also freedom in accepting that misunderstanding is sometimes unavoidable. Original thinkers are often misunderstood before they are respected. Calm people are misunderstood as distant. Quiet people are misunderstood as weak. Disciplined people are misunderstood as rigid. These misunderstandings say more about perception than truth. Dangerously intelligent people let results speak. They allow time, consistency, and outcomes to communicate what words cannot. They do not argue their worth, they demonstrate it. This approach protects energy and preserves dignity. Learning when to stop explaining requires self-trust. You must believe that your reasoning does not need constant defense. You must be comfortable standing alone in your understanding. That comfort is not isolation, it is maturity. Notice how often you explain yourself to people who have already decided. Notice how drained you feel afterward. That exhaustion is a signal. It tells you that your effort is misplaced. Silence would have served you better. As you practice restraint, something shifts. You become more selective with your words. You explain once clearly and move on. You stop chasing agreement. You start respecting your own time and mental space. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Not every conversation deserves your energy. Intelligence knows when to speak and when to let silence do the work. Stop explaining yourself to people who don't want to understand. Your clarity does not require their permission. Chapter 15. Live like a strategist, not a reactor. Most people spend their lives reacting. They react to messages, moods, problems, opinions, and pressure. Their days are shaped by what shows up, not by what matters most. This constant reaction creates exhaustion, confusion, and a sense of being behind. Dangerous intelligence moves differently. It lives strategically. A strategist does not wait for life to happen and then respond emotionally. A strategist observes, anticipates, and positions. This does not mean controlling everything. It means choosing direction instead of drifting. When you live strategically, your actions are guided by intention, not impulse. Reaction feels urgent. Strategy feels calm. Reaction is driven by emotion. Strategy is driven by clarity. When you react, you give the moment control over you. When you strategize, you keep control over yourself. That difference shapes your entire life. Living like a strategist starts with defining what matters. If you don't know your priorities, everything becomes a priority. You become busy without progress. Strategic thinkers identify what deserves attention and what doesn't. They say no more often than yes. They protect their time, energy, and focus with discipline. Strategists also think in systems, not events. They understand that outcomes are built over time. A single bad day does not derail them, and a single good day does not make them careless. They look for patterns. They adjust course gradually, instead of overreacting emotionally. Another key trait is anticipation. Strategists ask, what's likely to happen next? They prepare for obstacles before they arrive. They don't wait for pressure to force action. This anticipation reduces stress and increases effectiveness. When challenges appear, they are ready. Living strategically also means responding, not reacting. Response is intentional. It includes pause, evaluation, and choice. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Developing the habit of response keeps you aligned with your long-term direction. Strategic living requires boundaries. Without boundaries, everything interrupts you. Strategists decide in advance how they will handle common situations. This reduces emotional decision-making and preserves mental clarity. As you adopt this mindset, life feels less chaotic. You are no longer pulled in 10 directions. You move with purpose. You recover faster from setbacks. You stay grounded even when circumstances change. Dangerously intelligent people don't try to win every moment. They aim to win the direction. They accept temporary discomfort to protect long-term stability. They trade urgency for alignment. Living like a strategist is not about being rigid. It is about being intentional. You stay flexible without becoming reactive. You adapt without losing direction. This way of living builds quiet confidence. You stop feeling rushed. You stop being easily thrown off balance. You trust your process. If you want to become dangerously intelligent, stop reacting to life. Step back. Observe. Decide. Move. Live like a strategist. Your future depends on it. Dangerous intelligence is not something you are born with. It is something you build, refine, and protect over time. It is not loud, flashy, or desperate to be seen. It is quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in self-control, clarity, and deliberate action. Throughout this audiobook, you have been guided toward a way of thinking that does not react blindly to the world, but understands it, navigates it, and moves through it with intention. You have learned that intelligence begins within. Before strategy, before knowledge, before influence, there is mastery of self. When you control your emotions, slow down your thinking, and resist the urge to react, you regain ownership of your life. You stop being pulled by circumstances and start choosing your direction. That alone separates you from the majority. You have also seen that intelligence is not about knowing everything. It is about thinking clearly, asking better questions, and making decisions, even when certainty is unavailable. Life will never hand you perfect information. Waiting for it is a quiet form of surrender. Moving forward with responsibility, discipline, and awareness is how growth actually happens. As you continue forward, remember that dangerous intelligence is built through habits, not moments. It lives in how you listen, how you pause, how you choose silence, and how you design your days. It grows when you stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, stop chasing approval, and stop reacting to every emotional signal. It strengthens when you build systems, sharpen discipline, and think long-term instead of moment to moment. This way of living may feel uncomfortable at first. You may be misunderstood. You may feel slower than others. You may feel out of step with a world addicted to speed and noise. But over time, you will notice something powerful. You will make fewer mistakes. You will waste less energy. You will feel calmer under pressure, and your decisions will begin to compound in your favor. Dangerous intelligence carries responsibility. When you see clearly, you must act wisely. When you understand people, you must choose integrity. When you gain control, you must use it to build, not to dominate. True intelligence is not about superiority, it is about stewardship of your own mind. This audiobook is not meant to be finished and forgotten. It is meant to be lived. Revisit these principles, apply them slowly. Let them shape how you think, speak, and act. The goal is not perfection, but progress, not speed, but depth. If you commit to this path, you will develop something rare in the modern world, a calm, disciplined, independent mind. And that mind, clear, patient, and intentional, is one of the most powerful tools you can possess. Carry it wisely,